Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for a taste of thanks. Good morning, Joyce. Good morning, Miriam. Good morning, Annie. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Anna. Good morning, Alex. Good morning to everybody that's on Facebook that's joining us. Lillian, Alan, Wally, whoever else is joining us on Facebook. Good morning, Vicky. We're happy to have you all here, whether in person or online. And I'm going to change the schedule just a drop. Last week when we were learning about the different brachos and we learned about mezonos, so I said that this week we'll start the conversation about when something is considered bread and when it's not. That was where we were on schedule. I'm going to pause that if that's okay, because I feel like it's an independent conversation. It's a complicated conversation. I'd like to have it, but I want to get through certain more basic things first. I think we gave some of the ground rules for it last week, right? It's going to depend what the ingredients are. It's going to depend on what is inside. In other words, what the ingredients of the dough are, what the ingredients inside. In other words, is this like a sandwich where there's something, not a sandwich, like a pastry or something where there is food inside it, which may make it mezonos, and depending how you eat it. If you're eating it as a snack or as a meal, that may also affect it. Could be there's one or two other factors that I'm forgetting, but either way, and that's a conversation we're going to have when something is hamotzi and when something is mezonos, but we're going to leave that conversation aside for now, and we'll get to it when we get to it. All right? For now, I want to continue through our journey through the brachos. Okay? So if you have this book, Rabbi Tursky's book, Life's Blessings, we were going through the meaning of each bracha, and so far we have learned about the following brachos. We have learned, and they have not been in order, by the way. We're going to learn next week, maybe even this week a little bit, but next week for sure, about the order of the brachos. So the first bracha we talked about was shahakol, what we called the skeleton key bracha. The next two brachos we learned about were wine and bread, which we call the master brachos, right? Because they can include within them any other food or liquid, food for bread and liquid for, food and liquid for bread and liquid for wine, or drink for wine. And then we learned about bread and vegetables. In other words, the difference between hamotzi and ha'adama and why there's two different brachos. So that's what we learned about last week. And then the last one we learned about last week was Bori Mina Mezonot, this bracha we make for other types of food that are made out of grain. What's left is...
Can I just ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
When you make those little mini hot dogs that they have
Yes.
here in Shabbat, is that bread? That's my question.
The answer is no. It's certainly not bread. The ingredients are not even enough for bread. Plus, it's surrounding something. So that is one of the conversations we're going to have when we talk about mezonot. That's going to be mezonot for multiple reasons. That's mezonot.
Okay.
But you didn't ask a different question, which is when you have a mixture of two brachos. For example, over there, the hot dog itself is shahakol.
Right.
The bread by itself would be mezonot. And now you're having them together. Which bracha do you make? And that falls into a different category. Basically, there's two complicated conversations we need to have that we're getting to in 2-3 weeks' time. One is the mezonot versus hamotzi discussion. The other one is the ikr versus tafel conversation, which means what is primary and what is secondary. In other words, if I'm having a salad with a whole bunch of different ingredients in it, let's say ha'adama and ha'etz, fruits and vegetables, which bracha am I making? If I'm having a soup with multiple different things in it, which bracha do I make? If I'm having a sandwich, are the ingredients of the sandwich the main thing, or the surrounding bread of the sandwich the main thing, right? What about if I'm having something which by default, let's say, is bread or something like that, so it's very, very primary, but I'm having it as secondary. For example, let's say I'm having a swig of whiskey, and I just need something to be able to, like a chaser, and I take a piece of bread in order to do that. Does that automatically make it secondary to the whiskey? Right? This primary versus secondary conversation is another complicated conversation we need to have. Okay? So those are two things we've bookmarked that we're going to get to. But for now, No, not today at all. We can't do everything in one day. You guys are interested in everything.
Yeah, I'm just digesting it slowly.
Yeah. Okay, let's focus on what we're doing right now. We'll get through it once. Trust me, we're going to get to all this. Right now, let's do the bracha ha'etz. The bracha ha'etz is the bracha on things that come from a living tree. Meaning, we're on page 224 in this one. So, we've learned so far about shahakol, hagafen, hamotzi, and ha'adama. And now we are going to learn about ha'etz. Annie, if you can read for us, please, the bracha. Baruch. Right under where it says the living tree. Baruch, atah.
20?
In the Hebrew.
Wait. Oh.
Larry's going to do the Hebrew.
Oh,
Yeah,
different book.
Blessed are you.
Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the tree.
So this is a bracha we make. It's called fruit of the tree. And it's a bracha that we make for anything that grows from a tree. By the way, this is not the same as what our I don't know, that are botanically called fruits versus what's botanically called vegetables. That's a different categorization. We spoke about that last week a little bit. Like a tomato, for example, is ha'adama, and an olive is ha'etz, and certain nuts are ha'etz, even though we might consider them nuts or vegetables.
I need that.
Yes, exactly. It's like what comes from the ground versus what comes from a tree.
Yeah, I got the apple on here.
For now, let's dive into it. Annie, if you can read first, please. Note.
Okay. Note that these brachos are in the present tense. Who creates rather than who created. Every apple, every orange, every pear is the product of ongoing process of creation. The abundance and many varieties of fruits Hashem has provided for us are a testimony to his kindness. Our survival and nutritional needs could have been assured without them. The fruit tree has rich symbolism. Torah is a tree of life. Proverbs 3:18. And the Torah forbids wanton destruction of fruit trees. That's Deuteronomy.
And now we get a story. Larry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. In the town of
Nadvorna.
The mayor was a Poritz who was an ardent anti-Semite.
So a paritz means a landlord. This was in the Pale of Settlement. And a paritz is the Yiddish term for a landlord. Basically, Jews were not allowed to own land. In fact, I don't think anybody was allowed to own land. Only the noblemen owned land. And the noblemen had managers of their lands. And the mayor of the town was also an ardent anti-Semite, who was also like the town real estate conglomerate, if you will. He basically owned the entire town, and everybody rented from him. That was kind of how it worked. Okay, so that's the city of Nadvarna. Now, when the tzaddik,
Rev Mordechai built his sukkah, the Poritz ordered him to take it down under the pretext that it was a fire hazard. Rev Mordechai responded, I built the sukkah to be up for 8 days, not to be dismantled. After several unheeded warnings, the Poritz himself came, shouting angrily that he demanded that the sukkah be dismantled immediately. Rev Mordechai said to the Poritz, I want you to know that I am a nephew of Rev Meir of
Primishlan, who was a great tzaddik. He was a great righteous person. The Poritz said,
I don't care whose nephew you are. Take down the sukkah at once. Rev Mordechai said, listen to me. There was a Poritz who had fruit trees on his property, but he cut them down in order to plant a flower garden. He had 9 children, but they all died from a mysterious disease which doctors could not cure. Finally, when he had only one surviving child, the townsfolk said to him, there's a
Wunder Rabbiner.
Wunder Rabbiner in
a miracle worker, in that bar, no?
The Jews claim that he performs miracles and heals the sick. Go to him. The Poritz went to Rev Meir, who said, the Torah forbids cutting down fruit trees. You destroyed fruit trees, and that angered God, who punished you with the loss of your children. But I will pray for your child to survive. You, Poritz, are the child whose life was spared by my uncle's prayers. Is that how you return a favor? The Poritz turned pale and said, yes, I know that story. I'm indeed that surviving child. I apologize. You may keep your sukkah.
I think one of the things that they're trying to point out from this story is the tremendous respect, the tremendous reverence with which Judaism treats trees, particularly fruit-bearing trees. There is a prohibition in the Torah called Bal Tashchit, that we're not allowed to destroy things. This is also the origin for not wasting and any food that you have left over, you're not supposed to just throw it out or whatever, right? Or even not just food, even items that you have, whatever. Those are all offshoots of this mitzvah. But the original mitzvah is that you should be careful with fruit trees, particularly in war. I think that's the context of the original prohibition. That when Jews are fighting a war, they shouldn't cut down fruit trees for no reason. If you need to, there's ways that it can be done, etc. But you don't just do that. And the same thing, by the way, is true on a property. If a tree, but nice healthy fruit tree is on your property, you're not supposed to cut it down just because it's in the way of you building a fence or something like that. And this is a story that emphasizes that point. I think the point that Rabbi Tursky is trying to make is that Judaism views, and the Talmud says this, there's that verse in the Torah that talks about the prohibition against destroying, compares man to a tree of the field. And the Talmud discusses it. It says that a human being is like a tree. There are many ways that human beings are similar to trees, and therefore we have to respect the trees around us. I always laugh when I hear about you have these animal rights movements or whatever it is, right? And they come to tell Jews that they're doing something wrong. Very often it's because of kafarot, because of the chickens, right? Or I don't know, or let's say shechita, because we're slaughtering animals, etc. And they tell us, oh, you don't care for the chicken. We're here to defend animal rights, and you don't care about the chicken's rights, etc. Right? Or you don't care about the animal's rights, etc. I always laugh that if they understood the actual context with which Judaism treats the respect that we have for this world, not only do we have a tremendous reverence for animal life, and not only do we have the original animal rights movement, but we also have a tree and plant rights movement, and we even have a stone rights movement. When it comes, LMI, so why is it that we're taking chickens and we're doing these things with them? Because we believe it's actually one of the best things that can be done for the chicken. In other words, for a chicken to be eaten by a Jew, to be slaughtered properly according to Jewish law, and then to be eaten by a Jew as part of his Shabbos meal, and to be part of a Jew's service of Hashem is the ultimate mission, the ultimate thing that a chicken can do. Similarly with a tree, right? All these different things. But in terms of they're making sure that there are a set of laws that govern how we respect these things, how we care for these things, and all of the items that there are around us, Judaism has a long storied history of respecting every single creature in this world. I'll share a few stories in that regard. With regards to the chicken, or animals in general, I guess, there was a rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi, who lived in the early 1800s, mid 1800s, in the city of Chernigov. This was in the Ukraine, I think. His name was Rabbi David Tzvi Chaim. And they tell the story that a woman once came to him. Back in those days, one of the things that rabbis often did was answering kosher questions. Because remember, they didn't just go to the supermarket and buy chicken that was ready, right? That was ready, cleaned, and everything ready in a package sealed with some saran wrap. You'd buy a chicken at the market, get it slaughtered by the shochet, and then bring it home and salt it. And I guess something went wrong in the process, or something went questionable in the process, and she wasn't sure if it was kosher or not. She brings it to the rabbi, and Rabbi David Tzvi Chaim says to her, I guess it was the equivalent of $4.55 on a whatever at the end of the week, whatever at the end of the day. So he says to her, whatever that was for him. So he starts to look it up. It wasn't a simple question. He says to her, come back tomorrow. She says to him, I think I once read even that it happened like 2 or 3 days in a row. It was dragging on. Whatever it was, she says to him, listen, Rabbi, I appreciate your sensitivity, that you have many women that come before you, that this is their last chicken, they bought it with their last kopecks and whatever, and you have to be very careful with it. But that's not me. My family is a family of means. We can just go buy another chicken. No big deal. We'll throw this chicken out. If it's even questionable, kosher-wise, we'll just throw it out. And he looked at her and he said, that's what you say. But what about the chicken? Yeah. He said, it could be that the soul of this chicken has been waiting since the 6 days of creation, coming down over and over and over again. And finally it was bought by a Jew. And finally that Jew took it and got it slaughtered. And finally that Jew is about to eat it as part of a Shabbos meal, or even not, just as part of and he's going to use that energy to serve Hashem, and you're taking away that opportunity from the chicken? It's an interesting perspective about thinking about things from the perspective of the animal. Yeah. That's in terms of the animal. In terms of what we're talking about here, which is plant life, so there's a famous story in the Chabad world that goes as follows. Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Chabad Rebbe, often had like these spouts of illness, and he would have to go. He lived a very, very intense life, and he had like periods of his life where he went out to the countryside, and the Chassidim were not allowed near him, etc. Like he would just spend time in the countryside, etc. He would definitely still write Chassidism, etc. But he was like, healing, if you will. And at one point, he was walking through the countryside. I think we even know exactly where it was. And his son was with him, the previous Rebbe, in other words, our Rebbe's father-in-law, and he was a young boy at the time. And he was talking to him about how every single thing in this world has the word of God that animates it, and God creates it with His speech, etc. And everything is being recreated by God at every single moment. And in that way, everything has its godly soul, if you will, whatever. And as they're walking, they're talking about this, and the previous Rebbe described it was like a beautiful countryside, etc. The previous Rebbe did something that I won't speak for any of you, but I do all the time. He was a young boy, and as they were walking, he took a leaf, he ripped a leaf off of a passing tree, and he was like focusing on what his father was teaching him, and he was kind of ripping the leaf up to shreds in his hands. And his father turned to him, and his father said, for example, that leaf has a soul. It has a godly, spark that animates it at every single moment. And for a child to go and to carelessly rip it up without any is denying, is protesting the very existence of this leaf and what it might be for, as opposed to it being used for a mitzvah, etc. My favorite part of that story is the emphasis that the story tells us about how just because you did something wrong doesn't mean you can't go back in time and fix it. Think about it. That leaf, at least in the Chabad circles, has become one of the most famous leaves to ever exist. There's very few leaves that are like famous
That
as
was
leaves.
his purpose.
That's what I'm saying. So post facto, the Rebbe Rashab took that leaf and turned it into one of the most powerful and amazing leaves ever. Instead of the previous Rebbe had just ripped it up and there was going to be no purpose to that leaf. Instead, he turned it into a lesson that till today we're speaking about that leaf. Right? All the other leaves that were in that forest, we don't even know who they were. Right? But this leaf, we know it's... Anyways, so that's another story that illustrates the importance of treating not just animals, but even living trees and leaves, etc., respectfully and making sure that they have their rights. And perhaps the most novel of all, from a Jewish perspective, is stone rights. I always say that even the inanimate kingdom, we believe from a Jewish perspective that every single this table, this chair, these, even though they're made out of dirt and dead wood or whatever it is, right? Still, they have a purpose. There's a Hayom Yom. You guys know the book that we read from every day after davening, right? But we recite the Hayom Yom of the day. So one of the Hayom Yoms talks about a Jew will be walking when Mashiach comes. There's a verse that says, Evan Mikir Tizak, which means that the stones of the walls will start to speak. So the Hayom Yom describes that a Jew will be walking, and all of a sudden one of the stones, one of the cobblestones from the street, will start to scream at him. Bulach, you clump of clay, you're walking on me, and you're not thinking words of Torah? What makes you better than me? The only thing that makes you better than me as a human being is the fact that you can think words of Torah, you can actually live a purposeful life, an intentional life, and that's what makes you different than me. And if you walk on me and you don't, then you're the same as me. You're just a stone walking on a stone. Right? So this is the importance of even the things that are around, like even the stones that we walk on. We have to be conscious and aware of the fact that when we think Torah or do a mitzvah or any other, I say the laminate that's on the floor in this room is some of the most lucky laminate in the world. Like to be in a shul where people are going to study Torah. And by the way, the laminate on this side of the room is very lucky because it's always been jealous of the laminate on that side of the room because that's where we usually have a class we study Torah right on top of it, right? But this week we ended up on this side of the room. And can you imagine how happy the laminate is here that finally it's getting some of the action? Usually it has the women davening on it, which is it's morning. But then after that, right, we go over there to study Torah. Huh? Yeah, exactly.
Give me that love taps.
Love taps.
Yeah.
There you go.
Torah love taps.
So. I guess that's the point that Rabbi Tversky is trying to make about trees. When we say a bracha bori pri ha'etz, when we take, let's see how he brings this home. Miriam, if you can read for us, please. When we recite the bracha, we're on page 225.
When we recite the bracha bori pri ha'etz, who creates the fruit of the tree, we should give some thought to the miracle of the seed being buried in the ground, disintegrating, which is what needs to happen, yeah, and sprouting into a tree which will bear rich fruit for decades. Because it happens so regularly, we lose sight of the miraculous nature of the fruit tree. We should give praise and express gratitude to Hashem for this wondrous phenomenon.
We take it for granted that you throw a seed down and you put some topsoil on top, you water it a little bit, give it some sun, and boom, a tree comes out, right? But this is actually a tremendous miracle from Hashem. And it has tremendous significance, so we should not take it for granted. Joyce, you want to bring it home for us? The Torah.
The Torah praises Eretz Israel as a land that produces wheat, barley, grape, fig, and pomegranate, of olives, and date honey, Deuteronomy 8:8. Because these items are mentioned in the Torah, they are given preference in reciting the brachos. They are complex halachos regarding the order of preference.
Okay, so now he's starting to get technical, so we're going to use that as our segue. Now that we're done with all the brachos, we're going to use that as our segue into the proper sequence of brachos. So what he just mentioned is that even when it comes to ha'etz, meaning we're going to learn which brachos go before which brachos. Hamotzi, then mezonot, right, etc. Shahakol is last. We're going to learn about that sequence right now. But before we do so, he's adding something else. Even within ha'etz, even within making a bracha on the fruit of the tree, if it's one of the fruits that the land of Israel is blessed with, the seven wonderful fruits that the land of Israel is blessed with, so that bracha will be made before another fruit which may have the same exact bracha. Okay, so if you can now open up your blue books, which I think most of you have, we're now going to get technical again. We're going out of the soul into the body. Remember we call this book the soul of the brachos, and this one is the body of the brachos. Let's get back to the technical halachos, specifically about the proper sequence of brachos. So you're looking for chapter 5 in the book, page 151, the proper sequence of brachos. So you come to a table, and we've just learned over the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've learned that there's many different brachos. Each one has its significance. So you come to your table and you have maybe a glass of wine, and you have some steak, and you have some potatoes, and you have maybe some fruit that you're going to have for dessert, right? And maybe you have a cookie that's good, and there's all sorts of brachos in front of you. Let's assume you know the correct bracha for each item, which we haven't even gotten into yet, right? But before you do that, before you even get to that, you need to figure out what is the order of the brachos that you're going to make it in, right? You know which brachos you're doing. What is the order? Which one are you going to do first? Let me ask some questions. For example, let's say you want to eat certain items first. Does that play a role into it? Let's say there's an order to the brachos. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3, this is number 4, number 5. But I'm in the mood of this first. For example, I want to have my fruit for dessert at the end. And I want to have my, whatever it is, my steak and potatoes for my main. Do I have to have some of the fruit first because that bracha comes before? Or am I allowed to play some role in the sequence here that I can choose that I want to eat this later than this? Does that make sense, this question?
Yeah.
Dessert first.
Always start with dessert, right? There's a t-shirt that says, life is short, eat dessert first. Okay, so let's start to learn about the sequence of brachot. Vicky Belmont, if you can get us started on page 152 with the introduction.
The concept of kabod, bracha,
Which means honor for the bracha.
is a theme which should be familiar to us. We have learned in chapter 1 that a bracha should be recited with appropriate decorum, the head should be covered, the mouth should be empty, so that it be filled, as it were, with the bracha.
You guys remember this? Remember what we said, like for example, if you forget a bracha, and you have food in your mouth, you can't just make a bracha with food in your mouth. That's not respectful to the bracha, right? There shouldn't be anything else. Okay, so there's a lot of different laws about kavod habracha, of respecting the bracha. Keep going, Vicky.
The food over which the bracha is being recited should be held in the right hand. There are rules pertaining to the manner in which one recites the bracha. In this chapter, we will discuss the rules of sequence. We will discuss the facts to be considered in determining the sequence the bracha may be recited over the most important food. We will also discuss the sequence in which 2 different brachas should be recited. One who wishes to eat 2 foods, both requiring the same bracha, should recite 1 bracha for both. Reciting a bracha on each will result in a bracha
She'ena tzricha, which means an unnecessary bracha. Remember we spoke about that? We don't make a bracha she'ena tzricha. We don't make a bracha that's not needed. So for example, many of you this morning had, let's say, some omelet and some tuna, both of which are shahakol. You just make 1 shahakol. You don't make a shahakol on each food item on your plate. Okay? So that's, I guess, rule number 1. We don't make redundant brachos. Okay, keep going.
a bracha lavatala,
Levatala, which means a bracha recited in vain.
recited in vain. The question then is, on which food should the bracha be recited?
So do I make the bracha on the omelet or do I make the bracha on the tuna? I know it's the same bracha for both, but which one do I make it on? Okay. Similarly,
One eating 2 foods requiring different brachas must decide which food to recite the bracha on first.
so let's say you have potatoes and you have omelets. The potatoes are ahadama, we know that, it's right, potatoes, grows from the ground. The eggs are shahakol, we know that, right? But which one do you start with first? Which bracha do you start with first? Okay.
On the ground.
What?
Brachas are too serious a matter to recite haphazardly. Brachas are an expression of praise to the Almighty. That praise should be arranged in such a manner that the honor of Shem, who has provided us with the food we eat, is maximized. The thought and effort involved in properly arranging the brachas show respect and reverence to the bracha. Many opinions have been offered by Hazal regarding the proper sequence of bracha. Halachic authorities have also expressed opposing views as to the correct sequence of brachas. Since it is impossible to follow all the contradictory opinions, we have attempted to comply with the consensus of the commonly accepted poskim.
Poskim are the rulers, the decisors of halacha. Okay, so basically there's going to be a lot of factors, and there are definitely different opinions, but we're going to try to do our best to navigate those different opinions and come up with a consensus of what exactly we do. All right, and we're going to see now, we're going to start it by saying that there are 3 different considerations that you need to take into account when you are starting. So you have a plate full of food. There are 3 different considerations that you need to take into account before you start eating. All right, so let's dive into that. Alex, you have a book? Page 152, the various considerations. Page 152 at the bottom. You see it? The various considerations?
No, I don't see
Huh.
See versus indeterminate?
Oh, very considerate. Oh,
Yeah.
the title. I was looking for a text.
Oh, sorry about that.
In determining the order of precedence in which foods are eaten, Hazal considers the following factors. A, the brocha itself. Certain brochas are deserving to precede other brachos.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to get is we're going to get our order. This is the order of the brachos. There's 5 brachos. This is the order of the 5 brachos. Hamotzi, the mezonot, etc. Right? Okay, beautiful. Once we do that, B.
B. The food itself. Certain foods are deemed more important than others and should be therefore be eaten before the other foods, so that the bracha may be recited over them.
So here we have now, let's say you have 2 things with the same bracha. There are certain foods that are considered more primary, if you will, more important than other foods, and therefore you start with those foods. Even if you have 2 foods with the same bracha, it's not willy-nilly. You start with certain ones. And C, the last one,
C. The preference
of the person.
Certain foods may be favored by the person himself and thus deserve to precede other foods which are less desired. The underlying principle of these 3 considerations is
Kavod habracha, which means the honor for the bracha.
reciting the most significant bracha on the most important food, or the food one most prefers, demonstrates respect, reverence for the bracha and thereby Hashem.
Okay, so we're going to learn about 3 different considerations. You can see here, the first section we're going to read is A, the bracha itself. Then we're going to do B, the food itself. And then we're going to do C, which is the preference of the person wishing to eat. Okay. And you want to read for us? The bracha itself.
Although all brachas equally express our gratitude to Hashem and our desire for His continued benevolence, certain brachas also express specific divine providence. Some brachas are broad in their scope, while others are more specific and are restricted to a particular food or type of food. For example, bracha
Shehakol nihiya bidvaro.
Baro is all-encompassing. It's appropriate for any type of food. However, the bracha
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz
is restricted to one food exclusively, bread. Hamotzi thus expresses divine providence far more specifically than shehakol. The bracha Hamotzi is therefore considered a greater praise to Hashem and consequently should precede any other bracha. The sequence in which brachas are recited follow accordingly the degree of their specificity as follows.
Okay, so before we go through the actual order, let me explain what he just said here. What he just said is like this. There are certain brachos that are like master brachos, like shehakol we spoke of, right? That it works for a whole bunch of different things. It's almost like this. It's almost as if you could say, we started off with one bracha. Shehakol works for everything. And then halacha specified that when you eat certain types of foods, they get their own unique bracha. That makes them automatically more honored. That's why they get their own bracha. Hamotzi, for example, on bread, is because it's only on one food that you make it, makes it the most honorable bracha. Does that make sense? So that's what the order is going to follow. So now let's go to the order. Number 1 is going to be hamotzi. Hamotzi precedes all brachos, including mezonot. Okay, so no matter what else you have that you're eating, hamotzi is always first. Number 2, mezonot. Number 3, hagafen. That's on wine. Number 4, ha'etz or ha'adama. In the opinion of some authorities, a ha'etz should precede a hadama, since it too is more specific than a hadama. Hadama is valid both for vegetables and fruits that grow on a tree. Other authorities are of the opinion that the difference between the 2 brachas is too minor to require the ha'etz be recited. The proper course of action will be defined below. So basically, ha'etz and hadama basically go together. But if you want to differentiate between the 2 of them, then ha'etz will go first and hadama will go next. Reminder, ha'etz means fruit of the tree. Hadama means fruit of the ground. Where does a tree come from? The ground. Let's just remember that, right? So hadama, therefore, is more broad than ha'etz. Yes? Everybody understand that? In fact, we're going to see the post facto, if you made a hadama on a fruit that comes from a tree, it counts, because technically the fruit does come from the tree, which comes from the ground. Right? So we don't do that to begin with. But because it's more specific bracha, there are some opinions that ha'etz goes before ha'adama. We'll talk more about that soon. And finally, shehakol is the last one. Of course, it's the most broad. So that is the order. So, how many factors do we have to take into account? 3 factors. Number 1 is the bracha. Number 2 is the food. Number 3 is the preference of the person. We now have number 1 is done. We understand what's going on here. So the first thing you're going to do, you come to a plate of food. The first thing you're going to do is see how many brachos do I have here, and what order are those brachos. Yes.
The brachas on here, where's the mezonot?
It was there. Number 2. Number 1 was hamotzi. Number 2 was mezonot. You just missed it. We went through it quickly. Number 3 is hakafen. Number 4 is ha'etz and adama, which Either go together or ha'etz goes before Adama. And number 5 is shahakol. Okay. Now let's talk about the food that you're eating. So Rabbi Twersky just mentioned one thing. Larry, if you can read it for us, please. The 7 species.
The 7 species. As noted above, certain foods are deemed more important than others. The basis upon which we establish the order of the importance of different types of food is the Torah itself. The Torah praises Eretz Yisrael as a land which produces 7 species of fruits.
Eretz chitos ora begefen uteina v'rimon eretz zeit shemen u'devash. Translated.
A land of wheat, barley, grapes, figs, and pomegranates, and land of olives which produce oil, and dates which produce honey. Since the Torah praises Eretz Israel as the land of these products, we may deduce that these fruits are more significant than other fruits.
Pause. So far, if you have in front of you, let's say, only fruits, right? You're sitting at a fruit Tu B'Shvat event where there's a whole bunch of fruit being served, and there's figs and apples and oranges. You eat the fig before you eat the apples and oranges. They're all ha'etz, right? All 3 of those are ha'etz. They all grow from a tree. You make the bracha on the fig, and then you continue to eat apples and oranges. Okay? But now what if you have figs and dates? Figs, dates, and olives, let's say. They're all ha'etz. Right? Keep going. Larry?
Okay, furthermore, since the Torah listed these fruits in this particular order, we may infer that this is the order of their importance. However, since the Torah repeated the word land, Eretz, in mid-sentence, Hazal assumed that a new sequence had started after the second word, Eretz. Accordingly, dates precede grapes, and dates are second from the second Eretz, while grapes are third from the first Eretz. Thus, the order of importance of food is as follows. The fruit of one of the 7 species takes precedence over a fruit which is not among the 7 species. When both fruits are among the 7 species, the order of precedence follows the order as they are listed in the Torah following the words Eretz: wheat, barley, spelt, rye, oats, olives, dates, grapes, raisins, wine, and pomegranates.
Figs and then pomegranates. Right. Okay, so that's the order. So basically, we have 2 things here. Number 1 is if something is of the 7 species, it comes before anything else. And number 2 is if you're inside the 7 species, then you're going to follow the order of the verse with the point we made about the eretz part, right? If you didn't follow all that, that's fine. You have the whole order right here.
Remember that when you're sitting down to eat olives.
You're just reading my mind. I'm sitting here thinking, how many times have I really messed that one up? Along with the leaf that I wrapped around my
Great
finger
question.
and played with.
Let's pause. Before I answer that question, let's finish this idea because I think you're going to see that section C, not the one here, the third preference, which is the preference of the person wishing to eat, is going to help you out here a little bit. Okay, Annie, let's finish off first. The 7 species.
The 7 species, fruits are only considered important when they are eaten in their normally edible form. A 7 species fruit eaten in an unusual form has no precedence over any other food.
So let's say, for example, here, he's going to give you an example. Go ahead.
For an example, underdeveloped grapes, which requires hadama, not ha'etz, as will be noted in chapter 9, do not have the status of 7 species. Fruits and need not be given precedence over other fruits. Similarly, one who eats wheat flour, which requires only shahakol, as will be noted in the introduction to chapter 8, has no precedence over other foods. Drinks made of 7 species fruits are not considered as a 7 species since the bracha is only shahakol.
So he's like, if you turn it into a salad dressing, let's say you have a salad dressing that has figs blended into it, or you have, a juice that you're drinking that has, some dates in it, etc., right, some date syrup in it, that's not considered 7 species. When we say 7 species, we mean the fruit itself being eaten in the way the fruit is supposed to be. If you're eating an unripe grape, that's not, these things, or if you're downing flour for some reason, you know what I mean, without it being, these are all not considered part of the 7 species. Okay.
What do you do in this Passover and you put dates and figs in your Horosis, yeah.
Same thing. It's blended up. It's different. It's very different. Dates and figs. I never put dates and figs in my charosa. I put apples and pears. I know there's a lot of recipes out there. Yeah. Anyways, let's finish off though. Also, it has to be a complete fruit. Chazal consider a whole fruit shalem as being of greater. So far we said number 1 was the 7 species. We'll always take precedence over other fruit, and within the 7 species, this is the order. Number 2, a complete fruit. Chazal consider a whole fruit shalim as being of a greater significance than an incomplete fruit. Therefore, a bracha should be recited on a whole fruit rather than an incomplete one. So if you have in front of you a tray of apples, there's a full apple, and then there's some slices of apple, you make the bracha on the, and you're planning to eat all of them, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. You first eat from the full apple, then you eat from the slices. This is similarly with regards to bread. A complete bread versus slices. Hold on. And lastly, food and drinks. In the opinion of some authorities, bracha on food takes precedence over a bracha on drink. A bracha on food or drink takes precedence over a bracha on a pleasant fragrance. So food is always more important than drink, and food is always more important than fragrance. Okay. I want to do C, because I think this is very important, and then we're going to call it a day for us. The preference of the person wishing to eat, right? So far we've been pretending as if the person is just sitting there, and he's ready to eat however Chazal tell him to eat. Right? Like, I don't even care what I'm eating. In fact, if Chazal don't want me to eat steak anymore in my whole life, I won't eat it anymore. Right? But that's not the case. People have preference of which foods they like, and which order they like to eat them in, and when they like to have, like Larry always likes to eat dessert first. Right? Do Chazal have a problem with that? Let's see. Joyce, if you can read for us, please. The preference of the person wishing to eat.
One who specifically desires a certain food should recite the bracha on the food which is desirable to him. Reciting the bracha on the most desirable food demonstrate kavod ha-bracha.
Oh, so this is very interesting. So now chaviv, which is this concept of food being more desirable to you, you have a plate in front of you, and sure it has potatoes, sure it has whatever, but the steak is what's most desirable to you. You're eating steak and potatoes. Steak is shahakol, which is the lowest level. Potatoes are hadama, which is a much higher level. Right? And if there's other things there might be mazonot, maybe some crackers or something, right? There might be an even higher level. But you are here to eat the steak. Everything else is like secondary to it. The steak is clearly, if somebody asks what you're eating, you don't say potatoes and steak, you say steak and potatoes. Right? Because to you the steak is the most important thing. So because that's most desirable to you, that actually translates into that becoming kavod ha-bracha, the honor of the bracha. The honor of the bracha is to make the bracha on the thing that's most desirable to you. The same thing if you have a fig and an apple on a plate, but you desire the apple more than the fig. If you don't care, not whatsoever, you don't care at all, then you should start with the fig. But if you actually love the apple more, let's say the apple's a rare apple that you never get to have, or whatever, it happens to be in season, you're so excited to eat it. And the fig is not so. The fig, you have a fig tree in your backyard, and they're always growing there, right? So then you can make the bracha on the apple because that is what's chaviv, that is what is most desirable to you. Now, poskim, the halachic decisors, define chaviv, in other words, what's most desirable to you, as the food one usually prefers, even though at the moment they may prefer a different food. So it's what you generally prefer. And other poskim disagree with this definition. In their view, the food one prefers at the moment is considered chaviv regardless of what one may generally prefer. So is it steak because usually you like steak more than potatoes, or is it potatoes because right now you're on a carb fest, whatever, I don't know, like you need some carbs now, right? So there's two different opinions. It says the Shulchan Aruch follows the first opinion, one should give precedence to that food which he usually desires. However, one who wishes to follow the second opinion may do so. So in other words, you could go according to whichever opinion you want, but usually it should be based on the one that you usually prefer. So this last point, Annie, I said to wait till here, right? Because this last point helps you with your other point. You say, how many times I went against this? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
If you desire the fig first, or you desire the apple first, you can go with your desire. It's only the other laws that we said about following the order of the brachos, and then following the order of the 7 species, and in the 7 species following the order of the 7 species, right? All of that is only when they're all of equal desire to you. But if one of them is more desirable to you, whether a general desire or specifically right now you're more in the mood of one specifically, then that's the one you start with and you make the bracha on that one, and that is considered kavod ha-bracha. That's considered the greatest honor to the bracha that you're going with the food that you desire. All right? That simplified it a little bit, right? That simplified it a little bit for you, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us.
We'll have to read those pages.
Okay. No problem.
I have those on my shelf, and those are things, figs and dates.
I have no figs in my house. The dates are there because it was made for Passover.
Thank you all for joining us for a taste of thanks. I know it's been complicated today, but hopefully you can all review it.
It's actually very interesting.
It's enlightening.
And it's enlightening.
And see you all next week.
Doing it wrong.
But yeah,